of you. You're acting like little children.
Do I need to remind you that we need to stop a god from destroying reality?
You say you're a family. You're not acting like a family.
Do you like the Fast and Furious movies but wish they had more martial arts in it? Well, you may be interested in Fistful of Vengeance. And this one stars Uwais, who you may know from the Raid movies, although he has done a number of kind of like B-movie actions as well. And you've also got Lewis Tan, who was recently seen in the modern version of the Mortal Kombat movie. Now this one is actually a sequel to a cancelled TV series called Wu Assassins. Now I had no idea that was the case whilst I started to watch this film. You would have thought they would have incorporated it into the title. And to be honest with you, it's a film that kind of does require you to watch this series to really kind of understand what is going on. I will give you a brief synopsis, but I'm going to come back to that point. So it focuses on a trio of friends who are essentially like, they describe themselves as the Charlie's Angels of the Asian world, so to speak. Or someone calls them like the Avengers. And one of them's got kind of supernatural powers and things like this. So there is a sort of fantasy element involved here as well. And they end up kind of getting embroiled in a plot to stop this kind of triad, Chinese Triad kind of gang, which is headed up by this woman who may well be some type of kind of mythical being. And along the way they kind of meet a variety of kind of essentially female people who kind of join their kind of fight, and a couple of other kind of people as well. And we get this kind of, this gang ultimately trying to kind of take down the bad guys. That's your brief plot synopsis there. So, as I've said, this is a sequel series, and when I started to watch this movie, there's like a really condensed kind of like bit of dialogue at the beginning of the movie, which is essentially it's kind of info dump to try and kind of get you up to speed. But it's kind of like there seems to be so much kind of exposition just kind of thrown at you to try and kind of get you up to speed. It's like, what? And it all seems completely kind of like silly and over the top. And you can have introduced these characters, like you just got to accept that they're these pre-existing characters. One of them's got kind of special powers because he just has, and things like this. And you're off to the races, basically. So, with that in mind, and I'm going to come back to that. With that in mind, what can I say that works in this movie? As I've said, I've compared this to the Fast and Furious movies, because they even have the kind of the family line in here, and it really feels like this movie is using the Fast and Furious as a template to try and kind of base their movie on. You know, it's a kind of crazy kind of a crime caper filled with over-the-top kind of explosions, martial arts, fight scenes and stunts with a kind of a group of kind of unlikely protagonists who have this kind of bond, and you know they add new members to their kind of team, and it's essentially the Fast and Furious minus the kind of like the emphasis on cars, although there is a couple of car chases in here, and that's basically it. So you substitute cars and you put in kind of like martial arts and supernatural stuff. Here you go. So this movie I think is good for people who would enjoy Fast and Furious movies, or at least I think people who would enjoy Fast and Furious movies on the younger age, because this, I feel like if you've got a 13-year-old boy that's watching this movie, he'll probably love it, because there's kind of lots of kind of fighting, lots of kind of sexy women, loads of kind of like exotic locales. You got a bit of nudity in here. You got you got swearing. So it does try and be a kind of a more an adult kind of movie, but I feel its tone is much more of that kind of young teenage kind of feel to it, if you ask me. So it's like, maybe you shouldn't be watching this, but we really know who this kind of movie's aimed at. So I think if you're a fan of the Fast and Furious movies and you kind of want to have a similar kind of movie, then check this one out. And I will say that despite this one clearly not being to the kind of the same level as Fast and Furious in regards to, you know, in the pop culture zeitgeist, it certainly looks the kind of the part in regards to its production values a lot of the time. I mean, there are some. It's all kind of. I think it's all shot in Thailand. But there are some really kind of like, you know, exotic locales here, very kind of luxurious kind of like set pieces with, you know, really nice kind of location kind of shooting and things like that. Lots of kind of like stylized people kind of running around in practical outfits. We have this policewoman, for example, who kind of joins our gang a little later, and she's like, let me just say, she's not quite dressed for the job, things like this. So there's all this kind of like over kind of sexualized, over kind of stylized imagery here that will send the teenage boy's brain into kind of overdrive. So if you like that kind of style stuff, again, you might want to check it out. There's loads of action in this movie, absolutely tons. Every kind of like few minutes, the movie, you know, has an action sequence, you know, and there are some good stunt work on display here. I'll say this. I believe Uwais was actually responsible for a lot of the choreography here, and you know, as such, there's, you know, loads of kind of like, you know, fighting on display, lots of kind of stunt work, which is all quite good. The supernatural element adds a kind of a new sort of twist to it. But I think it could have done without that, to be honest. I don't think it needed it necessarily, but I guess that was part of the original kind of series here. But okay. Let me just tell you what does not work in this movie. So as I've mentioned, this is a sequel, and I have to be honest with you, it did not do a good job of bringing in new viewers, because it's such a kind of a cold open, and we're just meant to kind of buy into these characters with a huge kind of exposition dump, and that's all we kind of get. It did not do a good enough job, if you ask me, of making it a standalone movie. So if you were a fan of this kind of TV show, and I can't imagine there's that many because it was cancelled, then you obviously would definitely get much more of an enjoyment. But as a kind of a new viewer, someone who hasn't seen, you know, Wu Assassins, it left me feeling a little cold, and I really just didn't know what was kind of going on here. We just meant to accept a line of dialogue to tell us about this kind of 10-episode series and things like this, and it wasn't enough for me. I felt kind of like a little lost in regards to the plot. I mean, I just gathered, okay, it's a cheesy action film. There's a trio of guys, and they go around doing heroic stuff. And that's kind of the way I kind of like followed this movie. So I didn't worry too much about the kind of the backstory. I have to say though, I felt there was chemistry seriously lacking in this movie between our main sort of characters here. I just did not feel any type of genuine kind of family chemistry or anything like that. I don't know, I never really bought it, to the relationship between the central kind of three characters, and then we kind of get, as I say, a couple of like female characters to join it as well. It just seemed like people going through the motions to me. I never bought any of these kind of like people would be really friends and things, despite the movie really wanting us to kind of like to believe that fact. It just didn't quite ring true to me. I think it's partially down to absolutely horrible dialogue. The dialogue is so trite, so cheesy. It's kind of embarrassing almost watching this, to be honest, as a modern film. This is kind of like the macho kind of dialogue that you would kind of, you know, it just seems so like, oh my god. So this is like someone sort of going out and saying, oh, I'm really hard, so I'm like well hard, I can take anyone on. I'm like, you know, saying how kind of like hardcore they are without really being able to back it up. It's just like, oh my god, it just comes across as really sort of like, So yeah, the dialogue was horrible. The actual kind of plot, as I've said, is hampered by the fact that It's under the burden of a lot of kind of previous material, but I didn't really kind of get the storyline. There's just not enough character development in this movie. It needed to have some to establish characters for new viewers, and this is being advertised as a movie, not a sequel to a series and stuff. It's just a standalone action film. And even within that, kind of, you need to feel like the characters are kind of going on a journey, they're having an arc, and I wasn't really getting any of that, to be honest with you. The actual writing here was kind of very flat. As I mentioned, the supernatural element to me seemed unnecessary. I think it could have benefited from dropping all of that and really just having a sort of a crime kind of action movie. To be honest, I didn't think the actual mystical side of stuff really added a hell of a lot to it. And although the action is plentiful and it's certainly choreographed well, I don't feel like it really kind of was anything new. It wasn't bad, like I said, the action was fine. Lots of it, and it was done to a reasonable standard, but I wasn't ever kind of like blown away by anything. And the over-stylized kind of like costuming and the desire to be, cool like Fast and Furious just makes this movie seem so cheesy and so out of touch, I think, with the people that are kind of watching it. It just comes across as extremely trite, made for a very kind of like narrow audience, I feel, with kind of bland characters that did not seem engaged, that spouting terrible dialogue, that it's just all around quite torturous to sit through, despite there being a lot going on screen. It's one of these things where it's a bimbo movie. It looks, on the surface, it looks kind of like, ooh, it looks good, but you just scratch beneath the surface, you're like, oh, there's nothing really to see here. It's a bimbo of a movie, this one. 4 out of 10. It's a below average film for sure for me, but it's not terrible purely because there is so much going on. There is a lot of technical work, I think. It's some decent camera work and stuff. There's a scene, for example, where the camera it's like a one-shot thing and the camera's just like whizzing around. It's interesting, but it's just not a good film, and it's not a good story, but it's not good characters. 4 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.